Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about three applications of technology in psychedelic psychiatry. We joked a little in this group because I specifically asked to go in the middle because I like to pull on the threads that we've seen before. And so Mason talked very extensively about VR, and I love how he highlighted some of the risks and some of the concerns there. And then um, our Adam gave us a wonderful sort of visionary look into what these sessions could look like. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about how we take a lot of data and think about personalizing this process, why session monitoring is so important, and why access and inclusion are so important. So I think I'm going to pick up a little bit of what everybody was putting down, and hopefully springboard for the folks who come after me. As Mason said, I'm Jamileh Jemison. I'm a digital clinical director at MindMed. My only disclosure is that I'm an employee of MindMed. It's been really interesting to come to this particular summit this year. And in watching the sessions yesterday, I was really excited about a couple of things. All the themes I'm talking about today seem to be the topics of major sessions, which is great. And then here today, specifically with this group of folks, I'm excited to talk about how psychedelics and technology come together in psychiatry, because even though we started from folks using this in their cultural ceremonies, and then we came to the 60s, as Jerry walked us through. You know, here we are at this moment today where we're using all the tools at our disposal to hopefully make these therapies and the way that we can leverage data lead to curative long-term solutions for folks with very intractable mental health problems. So again, my three topics today will be precision psychiatry, session monitoring, access and inclusion. Just a sort of quick overview of all of those and how I think the technology can apply. So first, to talk a little bit about what psychedelic psychiatry is. You may have heard some other terms already during this summit, including psychedelic assisted psychiatry or psychedelic assisted therapy. And when we're talking about psychedelics, this includes both the classic psychedelics, which Mason ran through before, the DMT, LSD, mescaline, and psilocybin, but also folks have been doing research in MDA and ketamine as well, which have a slightly different mechanism. But as both Jerry and Mason mentioned, the idea here is that and Adam, that these drugs may actually change your mind. And so how do we use that to in a curative way? So then we go on to what I mean by technology. And I know it's obvious, but I always like to take a moment to talk about it. Oxford Dictionary definitions give two that I think are both applicable here. The application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, and then of course the machinery and equipment developed from that scientific knowledge. And when we think about technology in psychedelic psychiatry, we're really doing both, right? So we took what we've seen and learned and are now getting to understand on a deep neurological level about psychedelics and how they actually work in the brain and what that can do for mood in a person's life. And we're bringing psychedelics into psychiatry. So that in itself is an application of technology. But then when we go to devices, I'm going to go to the next slide here for a moment. Et voila, technology, right? And this is just a sample of some wearables. This is not even your handheld devices, your plugged-in devices, et cetera, et cetera. But with these, we have wearable, handheld, wired devices. We've got leveraging and linking large data sets. We've got large data sets we can create from these devices. We have using machine learning on large data sets to create models. We can use those models in assessment or decision-making in a therapeutic sense. And then this feels like maybe taking a little step back, but you can take existing tools like maybe an RV that's typically used for a health clinic for maybe health screenings or to take mammograms out to a community. Well, what if you could actually set that up so it would be an appropriate environment for some mobile therapy, so that, to jump ahead a moment to access and inclusion, we're getting our rural folks or folks who are not near a clinic where this is happening can also be involved in this therapy. So that's why technology is so important here in psychedelics, because I think it's a pathway to a lot of the positives for this particular therapeutic. So then a little bit about precision psychiatry. Precision psychiatry is taking notes from precision medicine and hopefully, I think, trying to do it a little bit better. The idea here is that the treatment can be personalized because we already know that therapies impact individuals differently, yet we don't have guidelines or really tools to figure out how to better titrate things for an individual patient. And this is really going to come into play as psychedelics develop because, some of them can be titrated very closely. We might be able to do smaller doses or microdoses of certain therapeutics, but that might not work for some people. Also, we know that if someone goes in and they just take a full dose and they take the full trip, some folks might need that once and they're having these lingering effects for 6 months or more. Some folks might need this to happen once a month or every 3 months or something, and we're not going to know that A, until we get more data, but B, until we kind of understand who needs what and why. And so the neat thing about psychedelics is we have a chance for the precision psychiatry to develop alongside it, because you can start to build in the tools you need to do it into the original studies, just as you're learning what the drug does. So precision psychiatry could get you the kind of wraparound full life information you're trying to understand about an individual to treat them from a bunch of different ways. So imagine your patient has a smartphone. You can get all sorts of active information from them, including ecological momentary assessments, questionnaires, cognitive tasks, a video diary. A video diary can go on for audio and visual analysis about mood and emotion. And then if anybody's carrying around one of these devices, it is already generating all of this other data about activity, location, which doesn't have to be CIA level, can just be like you understand home, you understand work, you see hours they spend in both of those places. You can look at phone and social media engagement, sleep, physiological data, et cetera. You could even bring in genetic data, microbiome data, and you start to get this full profile of this person. And maybe folks start to come into types that we understand need certain levels of treatment. This type is more appropriate for microdosing. This type is more appropriate for a full trip that occurs twice a year, et cetera. So that's the hope of bringing those two things together, bringing precision psychiatry alongside psychedelics as they develop. Session monitoring. We're going to have to monitor sessions. Like we know this, right? You wouldn't leave your friend alone if they were just doing this recreationally either. You need it for safety, you need it for patient comfort and trust. And we need it for a better understanding of the experience. And when you start to introduce technology, as both Mason and Adam set up very nicely, you can do a lot of things here. What Adam was describing sounds, amazing, with this full nature experience that you can get through these virtual or augmented reality sessions with the additional add-ons, where you can sort of smell the pine trees. You can imagine that as a sort of pimp my sesh situation where you're really enhancing the environment. Perhaps you're allowing the person to control some of what's happening to them through the squeeze ball that Adam was mentioning. But you can perhaps actually increase the therapeutic impact of the session, get it to that level where it is transformative if you apply technology to give a person both a sense of safety and a sense of control in there. Also, as Mason brought up, the technology collects data, right? There's the risks to that, which I think will be discussed in some other sessions here, but there's also the importance where we start to understand better what the person is going through, and then back to that precision idea, we get to maybe titrate the experience and titrate that process. So gonna have to rush a little bit through the end here, but I did want to talk about sort of the elephant in the room as the psychedelics develops and how technology gets to help with that a little bit. The New Jim Crow was a fantastic book, and Mason also referenced the war on drugs. But it's the big quote on the side that is more text you should ever put in a slide, but there it is. But the most important statement for me are these last two, where in some states, Black men have been admitted to prison on drug charges 20 to 50 times greater than those of white men. So that speaks to the inequality. And in major cities rocked by the drug war, as many as 80% of young African-American men now have criminal records. Now, the reason I bring up those two particular statistics, which admittedly are from 2010 and may have changed, is this kind of particular racial inequality also points to other sorts of inequalities that everyone is dealing with. So someone who may have been involved in a drug-wrecked city may have injury from violent crime that could result in a disability. Folks who have drug offenses are usually condemned to poverty, really, because a lot of the opportunity is taken away from them to get drugs, et cetera. And the fact that there has been a disparity in how these policies were implemented, and so it more deeply impacts communities of color. As we think about taking drugs that were once illegal and now making them therapeutic, how do we make sure that that truly benefits everybody? This is just the beginning of some of what's going on. This bit in the middle is a New York Times headline from a couple of years ago. And these other three businesses that I call out here are sort of Black owned and Black developed to either make sure that there's a way for these populations to find the therapy that they need, or in the case of Hurdle in particular, not only are they reaching out to people of color, but they're also developing cultural competency in this space. So there also may be ways to use this to increase access. Digital ways for folks to access therapy has been huge during COVID and has made it easier for folks who maybe can't leave the home to get that therapy. So I'm well out of time, but thank you all. And I hope that you will continue to think about how we use technology to make sure that psychedelics are transformative for everyone.